everything. And I'm in this huge operating room and there's all these doctors around me. And I'm on the table, and they had asked me beforehand if I had wanted to listen to any music while I was in the operating room. And I said, yes. And then they said, would you like to listen to? And I said, do you have Shane and Shane radio on Pandora? And so they said yes. And so they did. And one of the songs that I had been singing a lot throughout this pregnancy was a song called Sovereign Over Us. And it says, your plans are still to prosper. You have not forgotten us. You're with us in the fire and the flood. You're faithful forever. You're sovereign over us. And again, not so coincidentally, as they're performing this C-section and taking our son out, that song is playing on the radio. And I remember just singing out loud and tears streaming down my face because I knew the Lord was showing me that he was with us in this, that he was there and that he cared. And I remember just worshiping and just feeling his spirit and his presence so strongly. And so they took him out, and I very briefly got to see him, and they had to take him away really quickly to the NICU because what we had been told was because he had the most severe form of spina bifida, they were going to have to close his back when he was born to, prevent infection and all of the things. And so we were expecting to be in the hospital for at least a week after he was born. So we had made all the arrangements with family and everyone. They were taking care of our other kids. And so he was born, and I remember Matt going over to the table where he was, and I remember him taking pictures and looking at me and being like, kind of having a confused look on his face. And I'm like, what's happening? And they're wrapping him up in these, like, they have to basically put them in like a big plastic bag because they're trying to protect them, like the bottom half of them, from any kind of infection. Wow. And so he's telling me that there's something on his back, and they're touching it, and they're, prodding at it. And I was like, oh, okay. And so then they take him to the NICU, and they take me to my room. And so I'm recovering there. And so at this point, we're just waiting to hear from our neurosurgeon and to hear, when is the surgery going to be? How long is it going to take? How long is he going to be here? Those kinds of things. And we kept missing him because we would go to the NICU because the NICU is not in the same building as I was in for the delivery. And so I had to walk from my room to the NICU to see him. And, just having a very intense surgery. Yeah. And so we kept missing my doctor, the neurosurgeon. He kept coming he would come to my room when we were in the NICU, and then he would go to the NICU and we'd be in my room, and we kept missing each other. So finally, we told them in the NICU we wanted to see Dr. Whitehead. That was our neurosurgeon. And finally, we met each other, and he came into my room in the hospital. And I remember Matt and I were sitting on the bed, and he said, we're like, well, when is the surgery? And he said, your son doesn't need surgery. And we were like, what? And he said, and I don't know if he'll ever need surgery. And I remember Matt and I just crying. And we said, a lot of people have been praying for him. And he said, well, it worked, because I don't know what else. There's no other way for us to explain this. And I remember just like being just stunned that like my parents had their prayers answered. The Lord had worked a miracle in our son's little body. But he had also answered our prayers because we knew he was able. But the point of it was for us to talk about his faithfulness regardless if he did it or not. And so I believe that because we had shared his story up to this point, the celebration that people felt with us as an answered prayer because they had been on this journey with us was the thing that brought God the most glory. Because it said, it's one thing for you to hear a story like that and never know anything that's going on. And then he's born and you say, oh, wow, God worked a miracle. And that's wonderful. Of course, we celebrate that. But for those who were walking this journey with us every week, who were reading these posts every week about this baby who was going to have this surgery, who, we didn't know what his life was going to look like. And then to say, our God worked a miracle in his life was huge. It was impactful to people to say that, like, it was like they had joined, they were part of this now. And so God had answered their prayers too. And they had seen his faithfulness because of this. And so it was beautiful. And, Waylon now, he would just the most wonderful boy. And you would never know that he has spina bifida. You would never know.
Nope.
He walks, he runs, he jumps, he plays. You would never have any idea that this little boy has been through so much in his short little life. He's 4 years old now. He's almost 5. You would have no idea. But he has this scar on his back because eventually they had to take what he was born with was kind of like a little bubble on his back. And even that. So the most severe form of spina bifida is called myelomeningocele, where there's a hole in their back when they're born. And the second most severe form is when they're born with kind of like a little bubble on their back. But inside of the bubble is some of the nerves. And so what's happening when they're being formed in the womb is the nerves have nowhere to go because the spine's not there. So it goes up into the bubble. And so the surgery can be pretty intense to remove that because you have to move all the nerves around. Waylon ended up having almost the least severe form of spina bifida because the Lord chose to do that. And so the little bubble on his back did not have nerves in it. It was just fluid.
Oh, wow.
And so when he was 8 months old, they removed the little bubble on his back for comfortability on his part. And so he has this scar on his back that's a really cool, gnarly scar, actually. And the thing that Matt and I have said over the years is that scar to us is the stones that the Israelites laid. Because we point to that scar and we say, look what our God did. Look how faithful he is. And so that scar, every time I look at it, is a reminder of the faithfulness of my God. Not because he worked a miracle. Not because he worked a miracle. It didn't change him. That miracle did not change God. It changed us. And it changed the people who got to experience it with us. But it didn't change him. And so every time I see my son's back, I think, wow, our God is so faithful and so kind. And he loves us so much.